Hello, I'm Emily Booth. I edit the Architects Journal and I'm delighted to welcome you to the AJ100 Festival. We are thrilled to be celebrating the AJ100 award winners this week, and we're looking forward to offering you a packed 5-day programme of inspiration and learning with a focus on environmental and social sustainability. Our digital sessions are centred around this year's AJ100 practices, award winners and insightful speakers pioneering new ways of working in the context of major challenges such as COVID-19 and, in particular, the climate emergency. If you haven't already done so, please do register to view as many of these sessions as possible. The AJ100 has been charting the achievements of the UK's biggest architectural practices for 25 years, and I'd like to start by congratulating the practices that have been welcomed into the AJ100 Club based on the number of qualified architects they employ. And I'd also like to thank the brilliant Bruce Tether, Professor of Management at the Alliance Manchester Business School, who has once more provided his expert data analysis of the forces shaping the profession. You'll see that we've overhauled the AJ100 to give it a much deeper focus on sustainability. And we're pleased to introduce 3 new award categories: Sustainability Initiative, Sustainability Champion, and Community Impact. New this year are the 25 AJ100 Disruptors, practices and organisations from outside the AJ100 which are pioneering innovative and sustainable new ways of working. We'll be featuring a number of these disruptors throughout the festival, so please stay tuned to hear more from them and what they are doing to shake up the industry. But before I sign off and unveil the first of this year's winners, I'd like to say a few thank yous. Firstly, I'd like to thank our judges who gave their time so generously to deliberate and debate this year's winners. Many had to do so virtually at the start of lockdown, when it was a new and unfamiliar world of Zoom calls. Thank you. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors for supporting the AJ100 Festival and the AJ100 programme. Our thanks to our headline sponsor, Rocker. Our programme sponsors, Schluter Systems and Siemens. Our festival sponsors, Equitone, Moser and VM Zinc. And our trophy sponsor, Fixie. We'd love it if you could tweet or post to Instagram your virtual celebrations throughout the week. And don't forget to tag the Architects Journal using the AJ100 Festival hashtag. So all that remains is for me to wish my hearty congratulations to all of this year's AJ100 winners, and I hope that you enjoy this new virtual experience and the AJ100 Festival.
Now for our first award category, Sustainability Champion of the Year. This new award celebrates outstanding contributions to the sustainable design agenda in the calendar year 2019. And the shortlist looks like this. Louisa Bowles, Head of the Sustainability Group at Hawkins Brown, for work including the development of HBERT, Hawkins Brown's in-house embodied carbon measuring tool. Clara Bagenal-George from Elementa Consulting and Claire Murray from Levitt Bernstein for their work on the London Energy Transformation Initiative LETI Climate Emergency Design Guide. And Steve Tompkins from Horwath Tompkins and Michael Paulin from Exploration Architecture, originators of Architects Declare. The AJ is delighted to name Clara Bagenal-George of Elementa Consulting and Claire Murray of Levitt Bernstein as joint recipients of the inaugural AJ100 Sustainability Champion of the Year Award. Bagenal-George and Murray are dedicated sustainability champions who are worthy recipients of this new AJ100 Award, which recognises their passion and commitment in making the LETI Guide a reality. Launched in January, this detailed primer on how new buildings can meet UK climate change targets has quickly established itself as a widely quoted industry reference. Congratulations! And here is a short message from our winners.
We're so honoured and humbled to win Sustainability Champion of the Year. Thank you so much to Leonard Bernstein and Glenn Howells for nominating us, and Elemental Consulting for their support.
But for us, this award is about everyone who's taken part in that series, whether on the Climate Emergency Design Guide, the Embodied Carbon Primer, or the industry definition of net zero operational carbon.
It's been so brilliant to collaborate with other voluntary groups such as ACAM and our
Together, over the last 12 months, we've seen how many fantastic and inspiring people there are, all pushing for change in the built environment.
We're still in a climate emergency, so we're going to have to continue to collaborate with honesty, integrity and impact.
But in order to mitigate climate change, we must act now. So if you know what you're doing, then teach someone. If you don't, then it's okay to ask. But thank you!
This year, the AJ team have selected practices and organisations who are pursuing alternative ways of working to the traditional ways of practice. We've spoken to a few of them to provide a focus on what they're doing differently and why they felt this was important. Please welcome our first Disruptor Practice of the Week, Footwork.
Before the pandemic, when Footwork talked about the need for clear social principles to underpin development, it prompted as many blank looks as nods of recognition. But our shared experience of COVID has changed that, with the remarkable community support and innovation, and by exposing the stark inequalities that now have to be addressed. Footwork's purpose is to show that an approach based on needs and wishes and potential will help communities thrive. Greater autonomy builds trust and buy-in, just as failure to engage or to address need has led to poor practice and distrust. But as architects, we can't act on our own. This is a collaborative endeavour in which all participants must understand the social impact of what they do. And in the process, we can reconnect our profession with its social purpose. So social as well as spatial principles must be embedded within planning, education and training, something Footwork is working on with the RIBA and others. Footwork believes good development is also about having a collective and vested interest in creating successful communities. As the highest bidder wins all capital growth model begins to falter, investors and developers need a new way to do building. A slow burn investment model, building on evidence that socially sustainable communities are also more economically viable, is attracting investors looking for a steady longer term return. Footwork is not for profit, and we judge our success by action, by making things happen, by changing minds about what constitutes good practice, by effective collaboration on projects and research. We're becoming known as an independent and persistent voice on the value of creating people-centred built environments, and for addressing a wide range of issues, from involving young people in estate management to investigating the role of creative enterprise in successful regeneration. Right now, we're building on the extraordinary response to the pandemic. There's so much for our sector to learn about working with local networks, responding to need by innovation and collaboration, about the value of social capital and why we must invest in it. But COVID has also shown that environmental, social and economic sustainability are interdependent and must be tackled together. We must develop, procure and build in a way that is driven by human and environmental interests and not just by commercial ones.
We're now pleased to welcome this short video from our headline sponsor and sponsor of the Sustainability Initiative of the Year Award, Rocker.
The Rocker Group are the largest bathroom manufacturer in the world, incorporating some 26 brands underneath the global umbrella of Rocker. We have 78 factories worldwide, incorporating all aspects of our manufacturing production, from furniture to vitreous china to faucets to tiles to complete composite solid surface bespoke solutions. One of the unique benefits of being such a global player allows us to be part of some really unique opportunities. So, for example, Architects Journal, but also then our gallery networks throughout the world through a really accomplished sales and support network throughout the world. Being a global manufacturer and being present and prevalent in so many markets, we have a responsibility back to our communities and back to our workforces. That allows us to put back into our corporate social responsibility programme with things such as, or initiatives such as, the We Are Water Foundation. With sustainability being such a key part of Rocker's values and ethos, we founded the We Are Water Foundation just over 10 years ago now. The foundation is all about providing sanitation and fresh water to some of the most deprived parts of the world, reaching people who have lacked any form of decent sanitation or fresh water or adequate fresh water supply. What does this mean in terms of adequate supply of water and sanitation? Every 20 seconds, a child dies of poor sanitation and lack of adequate water. Almost 1/3 of the world's population, almost 2.1 billion people, lack access to basic sanitation. The We Are Water Foundation's aim is to contribute to the resolution and problems derived from lack of water and sanitation in the world. It's also a project to guarantee the access to water and sanitation in the most disadvantaged areas of the planet. We're absolutely delighted to be part of the AJ100 Awards, and we wish everyone taking part the very best of luck for the rest of 2020 and for a much better 2021. Good luck in the AJ100.
This next award is Sustainability Initiative of the Year. Introduced for the first time this year, this is awarded for demonstrating an exemplary or innovative approach to sustainability. And the shortlist is Archetype, Passive House Plus, Arup Architecture, Circular Facade Project at 1 Triton Square, Hawkins Brown, Zero Carbon, Zero Harm Sustainability Framework, Architects Declare, the industry-wide initiative in response to the climate emergency, Hopkins Architects, Energy and Carbon Benchmarking Database, ORMS, Whole Life Carbon Analysis and other initiatives, and Perkins & Will, Zero Carbon Operational Carbon Strategies Report. Judges were unanimous in their choice of the winner of the AJ100's inaugural Sustainability Initiative of the Year award. The winner demonstrated a clear mission and impressive level of industry engagement that's developed into a global movement with more than 5,000 signatories. And the winner is Architects Declare. Congratulations! And here's a short message from this landmark architectural movement.
Architects Declare are thrilled to receive this award from the AJ on behalf of all our signatories.
And we're grateful to the movers and shakers in other disciplines who've joined us under the Construction Declares banner.
Over the last year, we've seen increasing signs of climate chaos and related global injustice, which highlight the urgent need for collective action.
Our aim is to build enough cross-disciplinary support to bring about a tipping point so that we can switch from sustainable design where possible to regenerative design always.
Since we launched, we've grown our network to over 5,000 organisations in 23 countries. We've organised events, we've shared knowledge, and we've lobbied politicians.
Until now, that has all been done with pro bono input. We have so much more we want to do, so we now need to raise money to support our activities.
The construction industry already has so many of the solutions needing to address this crisis, and together we can meet this challenge.
We're now pleased to welcome this short video from our Community Impact of the Year sponsor, Equitone. Our final category for today is another new category this year, Community Impact of the Year, sponsored by Equitone. Here, we aim to reward a project demonstrating both deep engagement with the local community and exceptional and sustainable outcomes for all stakeholders. And the 5 on the shortlist are as follows. EPR Architects, Look the Other Way project for London Festival of Architecture. Foster and Partners, Park Walk Primary School Playground Project. HTA Design, Winstanley and York Road Regeneration. Ryder Architecture, Building My Skills Schools Careers and Business Programme. And Squire and Partners, The Ark Children's Hospice. Judges said this winning practice has demonstrated a genuine long-term commitment to improving opportunities for young people by engaging with the education system in an effort to bring about positive change. With its project partners, the practice has taken an idea and grown it over a long period of time to reach thousands of young people every year in the North East, and has ambitions to expand that into other regions in the future. And the winner is Ryder Architecture, Building My Skills. Over to our winner for a short message.
Thank you. I'm delighted to accept this award on behalf of Ryder Architecture. It's a great testament to the Build My Skills initiative's success and growth. I must say a big thank you to all the companies who are involved in supporting the initiative, but particularly the founding partners of Build My Skills, Ash Group, Arup and Turner & Townsend. The award will take pride of place in our office amongst our other awards, and we'll be having a virtual celebration to celebrate.
And now, for today's keynote, an interview with architecture's poet-in-residence, Lionheart.
Hello, I'm Emily Booth, editor of the AJ, and I am delighted to welcome Lionheart to the AJ100 Festival. Lionheart is architecture's very own poet-in-residence. He's an award-winning poet and he's a BBC Radio London presenter. His debut poetry collection is called The Mute's Rebellion, and it digs deep into memories of emotional vulnerability. But perhaps this is better in your own words. So, Lionheart, who are you and what drives you?
Who am I? All right, so Lionheart is essentially an alias that I developed to have an embodiment of the growth of my emotional intelligence. And it's taken me on such a journey from being a very fragile, vulnerable youth around the ages of 16 to 18. And now I've curated, if not designed or architected this being which is consistently growing and learning so much more that he can impact cultures, organizations, and people to make sure they have a deeper sense of dexterity over their mental health, their emotional integrity, and emotional intelligence. That's me.
And you studied architecture, your grandfather was an architect, your father was an architect. So architecture runs through you.
I fell into the trap. I fell into the trap.
You fell into the trap, but then you escaped.
I escaped swiftly, and then somehow you brought me back. All right, somehow it's been full circle. So again, I studied architecture at the University of East London. I studied from probably around the years of 2008, I believe, if my maths are correct. And my dad's an architect, his dad's an architect, and I kind of fell into the tradition of, you know what I mean, like, father, son, you've got to fall into my footsteps. But what I learned being in architect is that I had a stronger want or desire for how I could affect people's emotions and their feelings and how their behavioral patterns could be changed and molded. And funnily enough, my pursuit of poetry led me back into the architectural firms, which I used to have a huge admiration for. And now we're working with each other, which is a really, really passionate thing that I'm involved in right now.
And where is that meeting then, do you think, of architecture and poetry. You've said that you wish to create poetry in the same way that architects create space. Where do you see that meeting between architecture and poetry?
So I'm biased. I'm going to put this out there right now. I feel like there are lots of designers and architects and people who have this conscious or unconscious bias towards architectural practices or architectural pieces. I love Falling Water by Frank Lloyd Wright. I have yet to go there. It's on my list. But the immediate thought when I witnessed it on a page in university was, this is a poetic space for me. And it gave me thoughts, it gave me feelings in it. It almost recalibrated how I wanted to perceive the world. Because there was a beautiful medium, a beautiful gray space between poetics in form and then the poetics of emotional understanding. It triggered feelings and thoughts in me. Now, what poetry does on page, what poetry does on stage, is it invites you into a conversation that you already have with yourself. But now you understand yourself at a much higher level than you did originally, right? It's almost like you're looking in a mirror and you're realizing, wow, I'm really gorgeous. This is something new. When you step into an architectural building or landscape, it reminds you of a quality reflection. Poetry and architecture achieved that. But where I feel like the medium is needed is that we've almost lost that sensibility towards poetic, towards the need of emotional infusion into our design. There are so many conversations around ocular-centric architecture, right? How it's now being perceived that, if it looks good on Instagram, then it's a perfect form, it's a perfect building. No, I'm taking us back to a place where I want to trigger your emotional response in such a way, this now informs your design. And you know me, I like to yap, so slow me down if I'm going.
No, this is great. So it's about that emotional connection. It's how architecture makes you feel. It's about the impact that buildings can have on people's emotions, even on their mental health. I mean, you've talked a lot about that in the past as well. How do you feel that architects and architecture can help build better mental health through their buildings, through their projects?
Woo! All right, so this is going to be a twofold answer.
Okay.
I'm going to give you my personal experiences, and then I'm going to give you the personal experiences of my residencies throughout these architecture clubs.
Yeah.
Now, in my personal experiences, I've had depression, anxiety. It pops here now and then, and I realized around the age of 20 to maybe 23 that places that were strongly infused with brutalism, with brutalist architecture, gave me a reformative or restorative feeling to actually get back into my center. So no matter what I was feeling, whenever I entered those spaces, it was gone, it disappeared. And it was almost in a second or through a few transitional spaces in the Barbican specifically. And when I realized that if I go to an environment which is catered to maybe the aesthetical induction, to the where your emotions are taken on a journey, I'm going to feel like I'm transported outside of myself. That was the first indication for me. There's something around the built environment which is triggering or reorchestrating who I am emotionally. Cool. Hold that note now. I started to search for more places like that, because whenever I was depressed now, I always think, cool, let me run to the Barbican, let me run to the South Bank Center. And I couldn't find as many places as I wanted to. So I did some research. There are people who are doing this work as well. Sarah W. Goldhagen, a good friend of mine, Alina Gregorio, she's doing amazing work in interior design and exterior design as well. And I thought, all right, there is definitely some understandings here which I need to submerge myself in. Cool. First half done, all right? This curiosity in terms of how the built environment affected me led me to want to create an archive or research work which could expand my horizons in terms of my capability of understanding architecture's effects on our mental health. Okay, I'm really trying to do this as succinct as possible. I know time is of the essence, all right?
No, this is good.
So there's one thing for you to essentially get a poet and say, hey, we want you to write a piece about, let's say, architecture in the future. That's one thing. A poet in residency is something which I've almost pitched and designed for architecture firms specifically. It's a bespoke program where with Grimshaw, I was their first poet in residence from 2018 in November, and they carried me out through the whole year, specifically because it allowed me to integrate myself into their work culture and also how I could integrate workshops, looking at form and developing workshops around your personal identity, how you design space based off your neuro-linguistic programming. There's so many ways that we can go into this, right? Once I'm immersed into a practice, into a firm, it allows me to rewire how they approach design, okay? I'm gonna start very simply. When you understand your emotional response to people, to spaces, to psychological reactions that we have built in us, you now can put that into a building a blueprint, essentially. I wish I could do a workshop with you right now and show you that, right? But I've done this throughout the last 2.5 years now to really, quote, dissect an architect's mindset in order to extract that information, put it into a poem that can now trigger how we respond in the built environment. I am getting better at being succinct. I'm saying. So when it comes to mental health now, there are questions which I pose to architects, such as, how would you design a space that would mitigate depression and anxiety, right? To use that as like a case study, or to use yourself as a case study. The next thing I would do is provide love analytics. I've always realized that emotions can be personified into the built space. So I'm not gonna trigger you into this question now, but what I usually get architects to do is I say, all right, describe the person you love as a building or interior space, okay? And I usually get some really interesting reactions, but it shows just how succinctly we understand how emotions affect us. We are yet to apply that same understanding to architecture on the frontward facing format. I'm going to stop talking now.
So this is incredibly. I suppose it's quite hard hitting stuff, and it also involves people really being open emotionally, doesn't it? And sort of tapping into how they work and why they work. And perhaps thinking differently, realizing things about themselves and how they work that can really affect their projects going forward. What if you had to summarize the key thing that you found out from working with practices? You know, you've gone into lots of different practices. You're often called the poet therapist.
I know.
Which I think is great. What's your key takeaway? What have you noticed and observed about architects, and perhaps what's the one thing they could learn from that, do you think?
So I'm always doing my best to make sure that whatever confidentiality I have with these firms, I keep that between them. There's a relationship that we develop. However, there are firms, the last firm I went to was Snøhetta in Oslo. Mm. And their organic relationship with each other was so profound to me, because usually when I enter a firm, I am the go-to person, which usually brings groups of people together into a space to realize you have so much in common. In the architectural typical practice, what I've noticed is there needs to be a catalyst for you to, one, understand who you are in that design world, and then secondly, how that can contribute into the design boardroom. Right? There are two different facets: who you are in a space and what that can contribute to the design field. Most people don't gravitate to their emotional power and what that influence can do in their firm. I'm really, really profound when it comes to, I guess, extracting someone's core sensibilities to things they've suffered with in their childhood, how that has informed the spaces that they inhabit, how that informs their relationship with maybe voicing their opinion in the practice. All these things get I wouldn't say exacerbated, but enhanced, amplified through working with me. Most don't have the conversations they need to in a workplace. That's the one key takeaway that I've had regarding mental health, regarding their sense of ownership in a practice. They don't really get their voice heard enough, or their personality seen enough in a workforce. And when you think about it, we talk about unconscious bias quite a lot nowadays. For you to get the best out of someone, you have to make them comfortable enough to be themselves, to be who they are, without putting on a facade of this is how you are in the traditional form of architecture, right? Even when I was in university, there was this template protocol of how you conducted yourself. The important part of having me there was, in some ways, it was like shock therapy. It's like, wait, we can feel and speak this way, and this is going to make a change to the organization. This is going to make a change to how we approach design. essentially it's giving them a confidence to tap into who they are and be that fearlessly, because fearless design will change architecture overall. And I truly believe that.
So that's a really interesting point. The profession is obviously going through a very challenging period right now with COVID. The whole world is. It's a massive thing to deal with. Not just remote working, but just all the different pressures people have. Concerns, worries, anxieties. But we're also seeing a real resilience as well in the profession. What do you think architects can do? Have you got any tips or strategies in terms of building resilience and getting through this time? I think our listeners would really appreciate that.
Cool. All right. Again, let me chill. Let me relax.
Staying optimistic at this time.
No, I really believe that there is a strong sense of optimism. I mean, when we look at, all right, there was a poem that I wrote for someone in Bell Science Architects or PLP Architects. And I remember them comparing their loved one to the pantheon and saying that we just want to exist throughout time and show that we can weather the experiences that are adversity to us. And I thought that was so beautiful and poignant, as we can exist no matter what is up against us, similar to the buildings that we have and we grade them as like grade 1 or what. We can exist that way no matter what we're up against. Look at a building and see how it's weathered time. That is who we are. We can still exist thereafter this pandemic, thereafter how the economy has been affected. You just have to reorient yourself and see where you can provide value. That's the important thing. And I think most of us, with everything that's happening around us, we're thinking about money, we're thinking about being furloughed. What is the landscape going to look like for potential work? All these things are in the forefront of our minds, but really we should be thinking about how can we provide value to architecture overall? How can we provide a bespoke, unique quality which can't be found elsewhere? That's how you provide optimism, because hopelessness is borderline depression. Okay, optimism is how you breathe a sense of hope, and that gives you opportunities for new thoughts and new feelings. I'm getting better at being succinct. You see that, right? That would have been 15 minutes before.
But I mean, we talked about this previously, but I mean, it's obviously the issue of diversity and increasing diversity in the profession is such an important and emotive subject.
Yeah.
What do you think the profession needs to do to be more inclusive and more diverse?
Short answer and long answer.
Both.
All right. The short answer is be radical in your approach to diversity. Okay. And I'm going to add the word positively, be radical, right? In that there are so many traditions that I guess unconsciously or consciously exclude a group of people just because of their the lack of familiarity, or because there are certain strains of thought which you've been conditioned to think, okay, we need this how, or this is norm, this is what we're used to. The amount of growth that I've seen over the last couple of months due to the Black Lives Matter movement has been tremendous. But again, it's incremental stages. There are a lot of change that we want right now, but I feel like it will be a shock to the system. Let's be more radical in how we provide that applicational change, because you're not just saying, okay, cool, we're going to meet a diversity quota. These are people's lives. These are people's mindsets, to the point where, and I'll be really personal with you, when I finished University of East London and I applied so many different firms, countless firms, I'm not going to name them right now, they could be watching, okay? And I said to myself, I got rejection after rejection, and everyone receives rejection. But there shouldn't at any point from this generation moving on be in the mind of someone who's a POC or a Black person to feel like they don't want me there. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine in a really prestigious firm, and they said that when a Black person candidate who wanted to actually get a job saw a Black face on a website, when they went in for the interview, they were saying, I want to see where that person is. Are they here? That sense of familiarity and comfort is going to breed innovative thoughts which you wouldn't have before, because there's almost like an erasure of the Black identity of people of color, which we need to see. We see it everywhere else, but by not providing that on the forefront or the back end or at the principal level and above, you're almost conditioning the thought that you're not welcome in these positions, you're not welcome in these firms. And I don't believe that people think that. I don't believe that people genuinely wake up in the morning and think we don't want people of color or Black people in these places. But if you don't have a representative model that is inviting, that says to people, we can be here together and provide the next higher tier of architecture globally, you're providing the wrong incentive for people to want to work with you. We shouldn't be a tick box. We should be a cause for a more beneficial evolution of architecture. And again, we're seeing it slowly but surely, but it's going to require radical thought and radical application in an incremental way.
Thank you so much for that. Such a detailed answer, and I think much to learn from that. You've talked about young people, the next generation, as part of that answer. What's your message to students and young people who are starting out in the profession now, in what could be perceived as being a very challenging time, but perhaps there are some real opportunities there as well? What's your message to students and young people?
I realized at the end of my GCSE courses that sometimes the world feels like it attempts to conform you into a comfortable space. It's only when we're at the edge of being uncomfortable do we realize the power beyond our capacity to be resilient. And that's something that you have to practice day in, day out, week by week. There was a podcast, I can't remember what it's called, but they spoke about developing mental calluses to train your mind to be so resilient that no matter what you're faced with, again, similar to the Pantheon, right, to weather time, you have to really train that mindset, because you're going to come up against things worse than pandemics. You're going to come up mental health issues. You're going to come up against maybe obstacles in the employment for it. All these things you're going to be faced with. But if you train yourself consciously day in, day out, and have courage, bravado, audacity, a higher tier imagination, all of these thoughts can provide a sense of an unbreakable foundation to change, one, how you exist in your industry, but two, it's going to affect all the other areas to your life. Okay, and it will come very instinct rather than something which you have to trigger. Okay, and I think that's the important thing about developing certain behavioral patterns and attitudes. Always, and they say this on motivationals, always have a can-do attitude, But honestly, there should be a class in school or a class in university where we start to train resilience, because I've seen crits cause people to have breakdowns in university. These are things that most people don't talk about. Or when I used to spend 24 hours in a library and no one understands that these 18 or 19-year-olds are crying upstairs trying to get the models done in time because they've got to show it. There are all these things which happen behind the scenes that the lecturers or that the curriculum don't acknowledge, but it happens. And it's because of our, one, maybe our lack of self-esteem, but two, the lack of resilience and the strength and fortitude of the resilience that we need to start embedding into the architecture field. Arguably, some people might say, hey, there are gatekeepers for a reason, and the people who are really good will make it through. No, some people learn in different ways. And maybe we need to start upskilling the profession in terms of how we deal with the model in architecture and university to actually change how it works in the working culture as well. But yeah, train your resilience. I know I'm talking, honestly, this should be a TED talk, but train your resilience day in, day out, and challenge people to help you get to that point.
So resilience, fortitude, being radical, these are such important and such inspiring points. So really, I just want to say, Lionheart, thank you. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you today. Thank you for joining the AJ100 Festival, and I hope to see you very soon. Thank you.
We will see you very soon. I will see you very soon. You have a great time, all right? Thank you for having me.
That concludes today's awards announcements. Congratulations to all our winners. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow as we announce the next set of award winners.